if you look at Anthony Richardson, you can have a really frustrating time this offseason because if you look at his highlights, you come away just, man, like this is the dude, trade everything in the farm, number one overall, we got our guy. And I think that would be really easy to say based off his highlights. But what becomes frustrating is everything else that you watch from Anthony Richardson. If you go
I might act cool. I lost gang members, I can't act cool. I got gang scriptures in my tattoos. I was running from the police in my trap shoes. Posted trying to flip 100, I come back fool. Come from nothing, but I blossomed to a tycoon. Betrayal scars, can't stop thinking about them stab wounds. We might not catch him today, but he gon' die soon.
All right, welcome to the Third and Wrong YouTube channel. This is going to be a Colts video. We call it Dealing with the Colts there, a little pun for you guys. But we got a guest today. We got Mr. Ab Jude, Mr. Absolutely off of Twitter. How are you doing today, man?
I'm pretty good. I'm over here on the East Coast, chilling on a crisp Saturday morning.
Ooh, is
What
it
about
cold?
you? Now it's not really cold, but the weather has been fluctuating. Like one day it's like 60 something degrees, and then the next day it's like 40. So it's a
Ooh.
little, yeah, right. It's a little tough.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I'm doing pretty good. Just for people out there, I found Abjud on Twitter because I really like his thoughts on the Colts. So I hit him up with a little DM, and he responded, and that's how we got all this working. But let me fix something real quick for myself. See if that pops on.
That's how all the greatest love stories
There we
start,
go.
sliding in DMs.
Slide in DMs, yeah. So if you guys, appreciate him being on here, definitely drop a follow on his Twitter. He has a lot of good Colts takes. He's on pretty active on Twitter from what I've seen. So I really liked hearing him. Mainly, the biggest thing is he doesn't seem to be someone that just follows the opinion of the day, and that's what I like when I follow someone on Twitter. So if you like that, do him a favor and give him a quick follow. And yeah, but this video, we're going to be talking about the offseason for the Colts. I wanted someone to not just, mirror back my own opinion. So I wanted to have someone on there so we're not just here listening to my voice all day. But before we get into everything, stop real quick, give us a like, comment, and subscribe. We're still a smaller channel, so it does help us out a bunch if you do that, and you'll get more content in return. So it's a win-win right there. But like I said, off season for the Colts, we're gonna start off with the biggest decision of the off season is who's our next head coach. So, Mr. Abjud, would you like to give us your little thoughts on, not little, but your great thoughts on Shane Steichen being hired and that process that went into it?
So from the very beginning, I always wanted an offensive-minded head coach. I wanted it to be either Shane Steichen or I wanted to be Callahan from the Bengals. And I heard Raheem Morris was also one of our candidates, but I was a little worried about getting a defensive-minded guy. And I know that he worked with the receivers in Atlanta, but that was a few years back. And I think that offense was more predicated on Shanahan and his great play designing than it was, Morris. Of course, he had a hand in it, but either way, he transitioned into a defensive coach. So I think Shane is great because he does two things that we desperately need. He is going to draw plays for us to get our playmakers in space, to get our playmakers open, and to utilize them properly. And the second thing is he's going to be great for whatever rookie quarterback that we bring in. I think that Shane Steichen, from his presser, he gave me the impression of a guy who, well, he said as well that he's the kind of person who he looks at his roster and he tries to create an offense based on the weapons that roster has, not the other way around, not trying to force our superstars to be things that they can't be. And judging from the 2022 season, those are the coaches that have had the most success. The Brian Dable, the McDaniel in Miami, those guys, they go there. They didn't move any pieces necessarily. They didn't ship any superstars or anyone that would, drastically alter their offense. They brought in some pieces, and he drew up some plays for the guys that they had. And I think that is going to serve Shane very well,
I feel like saying Shane Steichen with a bunch of other words that starts with S is just so hard to do.
right?
But
Such a tongue twister.
oh yeah. And sorry, I think on my end, the audio is coming in a little blurred out. Mr. Absolutely has a great voice, and so I feel kind of bad that it's not coming in clearly. But yeah, I agree with you. I think one of the things I posted, I think, 2 videos about the head coaching situation already, and I kind of given my view of one. I did want a leader over a coordinator, and I think if we were to just hire a coordinator, it'd been great to hire someone like a Brian Callahan, Mike Kafka, or Ben Johnson. I think from the Lions, like those are definitely like good hires. But I think the reason why we didn't see Steichen here is obviously he was in the Super Bowl run, kind of a la Frank Reich about 5 years ago, and so it's hard to really tell what candidate's going to be best without actually hearing from them. And so that's the hard thing from a fan's perspective is having that perspective of who's coming in for these interviews, what they're doing, what they're saying, and all that kind of stuff. But when they did make their decision and went with Steichen, I think what you said, he builds around the players and creates a great offense. I think that shows that one, he's confident in his abilities, but he's not overconfident where he has to have his one system and force the square peg into the round hole. So I think that's one of the things I really liked. But I also like what he said. We're going to pass to score points because you have to in this league, but we're going to be able to run to win games. And I think that's where I was like, boom, okay, that's the guy. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, one thing, sorry for interrupting you,
You're good.
but yeah, 2 things. One, Ben Johnson was definitely one of my favorites as well. I think he's got a similar makeup to Steichen. Like I think Ben Johnson is, he's a man amongst men, and he's an amazing leader. And what he was able to do with that cast and Jared Goff as his starting quarterback, I have all nothing but high praise for Ben Johnson. He's one of the good ones. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought that point up about the passing to score, but running to win the game, right? I think that on the surface, it's easy to think that's Shane Steichen saying that we're going to pass the ball more, right? But you have to pay attention to the moves that were made. They brought in a new O-line coach to replace Strausser. They brought in the running backs coach from the Giants. Now, I believe that part of the plan is going to be for Shane Steichen to get a good offensive line, and we are going to run the hell out of the ball. And it's going to be a combination of Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss, and Deion Jackson, because it seems like because we lost games down the stretch, people are forgetting. Zach Moss was one of the rushers who had a 100-yard rushing day behind the terrible O-line that we had. And people seem to be forgetting that, but Zach Moss was running with a lot of juice down the stretch. So imagine him and Jonathan Taylor as a 1-2 punch. I think we're going to run the hell out of the ball. And then we're going to pick our spots to use play action, to use concepts and mismatches and misdirections and things like that, to throw the ball. Meaning, I think that in red zone, we're going to see some fun plays in the red zone. We're going to see some flare screens. We're going to see some jump balls. We're going to see some
corn dogs.
Sneaks. Yeah, some corn dogs. Exactly right. We're going to see some innovative stuff on offense. But do not get it twisted. It will start with the run game. We are going to run the hell out of the ball, and we should.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, too, is, we have towers. We have like 4 or 5 just monster people. One, that bodes well for the run blocking game, right? Having, 2 6'4" wide receivers, either side of the ball. You have, 2 6'7" tight ends. You have a 6'5" tight end and a 6'3" tight end. So we got some big dudes. We can run the ball for sure. And then we can throw the ball to whoever the hell is covering Michael Pittman. He's just going to moss him, So it'll be a fun offense, I think. But I think what we're also going to see is just there's going to be no favoritism. It's just whoever is winning that matchup that day, he's going to get the ball. A.J. Brown had some great games. Devontae Smith had some great games. Dallas Goedert had some great games. Boston Scott had some great games. Like it's not going to be a favored offense. It's going to be, what matchup do we like the most here? And so one other thing I wanted to bring up when you said Zach Moss, I started laughing because I just had this conversation on Twitter with someone who was talking about how the Bills, and we'll get into this a little bit, but the Bills should draft Bijan Robinson in the first round. And I was
Mhm.
like, you can do that. Great, great pick. Bijan Robinson's a good running back, but you're not going to get the full value out of Bijan Robinson in that offense because you haven't gotten any value out of Evan Singletary, out of um, Cook that they just
Mhm.
drafted, and you haven't got anything out of Zach Moss. And then it took Zach Moss 5 games with a bad offensive line in Indy to get his first 100-yard rushing game. And so it's
So
like,
you were right the first time. A bad offense.
exactly, yeah, yeah. But like also, to kind of throw the extra layer there, the bad offensive line too. And so,
Mhm.
um, the whole deal was like you can take Bijan Robinson, but just take someone that's going to be more valuable to your team is all.
Right.
But yeah, so that's Shane Steichen. I think that kind of leads us into our next little topic here. I think probably the hottest button right now that we can go with, and that is who we think the Colts are going to take in the first round. Are we going to trade up? Are we going to stay put and just hope our quarterback lands there? What are your thoughts? Okay? What do you want, and what do you think will happen?
Okay. So what I would want, right, is for us to take pick 36, take a pick in the third, and Kenny Moore, send them over to the Chicago Bears for Justin Fields. Let them draft whoever they want at one, and we can take pick four and trade it back for a decent haul, like Ballard loves to do. Stack up the rest of the offense, and I get, Justin Fields already has 2 years on his deal. He has 2 years left and most likely the fifth year option. So, but I think that he presents us with a unique situation where he meets all of Ballard's prototypical size, weight, speed, athleticism, and he is in a similar mold to Jalen Hurts, except he's 6'4". So I think that Shane Steichen would have similar success with Justin Fields as he would have with Jalen Hurts because Justin Fields has rare rushing ability. And he's very underrated as a passer. And I know people are going to look at his numbers and say he hasn't been good and he hasn't done this. But, those people also forget that he came from the University of Georgia and he went to Ohio State where he was then surrounded by those weapons. We can't really fault him or say that, he's an Ohio State quarterback, so he will most likely won't translate. We haven't really been lucky, but I feel like also an Ohio State fan. We haven't really been lucky, but I feel like Justin Fields did not fit our mold of a prototypical quarterback. Even when we got him, I thought to myself, like, that's not the quarterback that Ohio State typically gives. It's either he's an elite runner, but not really a good passer. But I think Justin Fields has rare deep ball ability. And I think if you give him some weapons like Michael Pittman Jr. or Alec Pierce or Ogletree or Jelani Woods, you give him some big bodies who have really good hands to throw to, I think he can definitely thrive. You draw up some stuff for him, and how many running backs, let alone quarterbacks in the NFL, can rip off 60, 70-yard touchdowns in a blink of an eye.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
There's
that's
not
what
many.
right. So that's what I would want personally. And Ballard was also in love with Justin Fields the year that he was coming out, but somehow we ended up with Carson Wentz.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, but what I think will happen though, because of the kind of GM that Ballard is, and because of his track record and the ways that he's behaved in other drafts, I think that he's going to stay pat at four. I don't think that any of these guys in this draft move the needle so much that there's a huge gap between one, two, or three. There might be a gap between three and four, but I don't think that the gap between one, two, and three would be worth what even the Bears, I think, would ask for us to jump to number one. Like that's a huge price to pay to jump up 3 spots. And let's say, for example, hypothetically speaking, we trade all those assets and then we draft a quarterback at one, but we pick the wrong one. Now it's like not only are we set back because we have the wrong quarterback, now we have to find ways to recuperate assets because then next season, if Ballard is gone, our next GM is going to have to come in. He's going to have to ship off some superstars. he's gonna have to, send some people away in order for him to recuperate some of those picks. And I think Ballard is a calculated thinker. He is not a risk taker. And the sooner that the Colts fan base realizes that, the happier they'll be, the less angry they'll be at these decisions. He is a calculated thinker. Chess, not checkers. I'm always telling people that.
Oh yeah, and so I do like what your thoughts are there because I do think if we are able to get someone that Steichen can work with at four and not have to trade up, I think that's just like the best case scenario. What I want to happen is something that I think what became possible the moment that I wanted to remember his name, but the tight end for the Texans just balled on the Colts at the,
Oh
week 18.
yeah,
Forget his
yeah.
name, but he's a good tight end.
Mhm.
But whoever it was just balled out and just stole the number one pick away from the Texans. And
That was amazing.
I'm sure Lovie Smith was happy about that too, to be honest. But um, no, I as soon as that happened, I was like, perfect. The Colts have a relationship with the Bears. They have their old head coach. I'm sure something's going to happen between them this offseason to get that number one pick. So that's what I want to happen. I think kind of building off what you're talking about with trading for Justin Fields is I think we can make this package work without selling the whole farm. I think Kenny Moore is a very interesting player to put in there, but I think also, um, I am just about to lose his name. Um, who's our safety from Utah? Blackman.
Julian Blackman.
Yeah, Julian
Yeah,
Blackman. I think he's also someone, mainly because
Rodney McLeod.
Not McLeod, the other one.
Oh, Rodney Thomas. The other one.
Rodney
The other one.
Thomas.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm just
Rodney
all over the
Thomas.
place.
Yeah, yeah.
But
It's okay. Yeah,
I think Rodney Thomas makes Julian Blackman a little expendable for the right
expendable.
deal, and Kenny Moore as well. I don't think both of them get put in this trade, but I think you have some trade pieces that Eberflus is interested to bring into his team. I don't think we're going to trade a DeForest Buckner or a Grover Stewart. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think there's a lot of pieces that can be used in this trade to make it to where it's okay. Obviously, it's going to be the fourth overall pick. That's a no-brainer. And then it might save us not having to do a full first round, second round kind of deal, and make this trade a little bit more manageable. And the reason why is you have proven commodities that are good, but they're just not needed in our defense right now. And so that's what I want to see happen. I don't know if that will happen, but I think that would take a lot of the draft compensation load out of it. And that might be good for the Bears who want to get going right now, I would assume. They're going to take some defensive players in the draft, and obviously they need to get some wide receiver help somehow. But I think that helps out both sides really well. I don't know the exact compensation, but that's what I want to happen. And the reason why is, for one, I think it's good to show a lot of trust and confidence in your quarterback trading up to get number one. That's kind of just the people side of the move. And then also you have the Texans, which to me, that's where it becomes really hard to sit is like, what if the Texans take the dude that we want and we don't want to see him for the next 4 years, 5, 10 years. So that's kind of my thinking when it comes into trading for that first pick. But what I do think is kind of along your lines is maybe the Texans trade up to number one and kind of just outbid us because the Bears don't have to drop far. That kind of removes the temptation to sell the farm, and that might be a good thing. And then what I think happens is Ballard takes either Stroud or Levis. And we can kind of talk about some of these prospects, but the reason why I say Stroud and Levis is kind of what you said. Size-wise, it makes a lot more sense. And with Steichen as your head coach, you're going to be able to get a lot out of them, and he can cover some of those rookie mistakes early on and build an offense where hopefully by year 3, 4, and 5, we're looking at playoff runs and deep playoff runs. So let's bring up our first quarterback here. This is one. Oh wait, let's see. Let's talk about C.J. Stroud first because you're an Ohio State fan. You've got to watch him over the course of 2 years. I do not like Ohio State, and I haven't said that up to now. So Sorry if I've offended you, but I
No, no, not at all.
I was so happy when they lost to Michigan, and that that to me was just made my college football year, mainly because of the fan fallout. But that was
Hmm.
that's my deal. But I do have to say, C.J. Stroud, the thing I like the most about him, obviously his accuracy is good, his decision making is good, but you can see there's a huge difference from his offense in year one than year two. His game in Michigan, the first year, he just did not know what to do with the pass rush. He didn't know what to do with blitzing. He didn't know what to do under pressure as well. And then you go to
Well,
the game.
to
Sorry,
be
going.
No, it's okay. I'm sorry. To be fair, though, that Michigan team had Aiden Hutchinson in it. It had
Ojabo.
the other kid, yeah, Ojabo in
Yeah.
it,
No,
and
they're
yeah,
loaded.
so
Yeah.
that front was loaded. Yeah.
But like you could look in his tape in the first year and it's like, okay, he makes nice throws when he's open. He makes, some good decision making, but when it's up in his face, he doesn't do a great job. Then you see in year two, he had almost the whole playbook opened up to him. And then the game in Georgia, he was taking it in the face and dropping dimes. And that's a big stage to do that with everything on the line. Obviously, they didn't come up with the win, but man, like that performance, I was like, okay, I'll be honest. I like C.J. Stroud for the Colts now, man. So that was hard to do because I'm just not an Ohio State fan. But that's what I really like about C.J. Stroud is he grew, and you could see like a legitimate difference if you watch one tape versus the other. So, but since you're the Ohio State fan, you're the master here. What are your thoughts on C.J. Stroud?
I really like CJ. I like CJ as a person. I think CJ is an incredible kid. Like he has great character. Like I don't think any of that will ever be a concern. Like I think, and he's got a little moxie to him too. Like he's got a little cockiness to him. So and I like that. Like I want that in my quarterback. Like I want my quarterback to think that he's the best player on the field every time he steps foot on the field. And I feel like that's what CJ brings. And even going as far back as when Justin Fields was at Ohio State and CJ came in for some mop up duty. The kid from then and the kid that you were talking about that played against Georgia are like light years apart. So like that is a great sign too. It shows that he's very coachable. He's very like hungry to learn and he wants to be better and he wants to do better. And during the games that we've lost in those 2 years, he's always constantly, talked about he's the kind of person who wants to improve on the mistakes, and it was his fault that things weren't the way that they were. Even though some receivers were flat out just dropping passes, and
Zach
he would always
Wilson.
say, right, and he would always say, I have to do a better job of getting him the ball. I have to put better touch on the ball and make better decisions and things like that. So I love that aspect of his game. The one thing that I'm concerned about from him is that he needs a good infrastructure to succeed at the NFL level. I think that he's a better Dwayne Haskins, and that comp it might rub some people the wrong way, but what he did at Ohio State is similar to what Dwayne Haskins did at Ohio State. He had a bunch of playmakers around him. He made good decisions. He got the ball to where they needed to be, and his stats were, a lot of yak yardage and a lot of, elite playmakers making plays for him. And I feel like CJ Stroud had the same type of setup at Ohio State. So now coming into our team, we have a lot of young playmakers. And I think that it could work in our system, but in order for him to be fully realized, we would have to work on the offensive line a great deal. We would have to get him a great deal of pass blocking. We'd have to, let him just manage games and let him just distribute the ball. And I am not sure that we're going to be able to do that right away. Granted, he has shown the ability to make some plays with his legs and move around and things like that. But there's still some things that I would like to see between now and the actual and draft day. There's some things in the processes that I would like to see before I have a more concrete picture of CJ Stroud. But I like him as an athlete. I think he's a good fit, but we would have to help him, a decent amount if we were to bring him in.
Yeah, I think that's very fair criticism. I feel like of C.J. Stroud. I think the one thing too to mention, he's 6'3", right? If I'm not mistaken. So
Something like that.
he's
Yeah.
got like a little bit of a bigger body, and
Hmm.
I think that kind of leads me into kind of the 1A 1B conversation with Bryce Young in the public's eye, right? Bryce Young is either head and shoulders above everyone, or in real life he's head and shoulders below everyone because he's so short. Um, the thing that I get nervous about with Bryce Young, and I'll be saying this throughout the whole offseason until I'm proven otherwise in the regular season, but Bryce Young plays like a 5'10" Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz is injured every single year, and you got a body that's not as big as a 6'4" Carson Wentz, and to me, I was watching the Tennessee game and he had a hell of a game, but like there's like 7 or 8 times where he threw the ball and he was just pulverized into the ground, or he was pulverized into the sideline. Like he was just taking hits like he had 9 lives. And to me, that's just extremely concerning. You know, forget everything about his, his great ability. You know, you put his body or his mind and his ability into a bigger quarterback, I would say fine, he's worth the risk. But if he pulls up at sub 5'10" or 5'10 and a half, like I I feel like he's just too small to play the way that he does.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, but I tend to look at it more in a like in a bigger vacuum than that. So when it comes to players that are anomalies, like players who are ridiculously small or players who might be like slight, things like that, you have to look at what it is that they can do, and you have to be honest with yourself. You know, if we were to draft Bryce Young, we would have to, as an organization, sit in that room and look at each other and think to ourselves, there's a chance that he's going to get hurt. There's a chance that he's going to be hurt often. And we would have to be okay with that. It would have to be a situation where the reward would be so high for him that the risk of him getting hurt, we'd be okay with it every single game. But if we can wrap our minds around that, we can make it work because we've seen short guys be successful in the NFL. Granted, those guys also do get hurt, but I think that keeping yourself safe and things like sliding and running out of bounds, they put a higher emphasis on player safety at the NFL level, especially for the quarterbacks. So if the quarterback is already small, I think that they would do their best to try and keep him protected as much as they could. And I also think that there are things that we can do design wise and in plays and certain concepts that we can use to move the pocket, get him out of space, so that way he's not facing all these rushers and he doesn't have to stand in the pocket.
All right, sorry, we had some technical difficulties. I fat fingered a button and ended our video when we got into some really good conversation about Anthony Richardson. So we were just talking about Bryce Young, if you're watching the video, and this is going to be kind of a hard cut into Anthony Richardson. So sorry about that, but let's just bring up the man, Anthony Richardson. What I was trying to say in our great conversation off screen is that if you look at Anthony Richardson, you can have a really frustrating time this offseason because if you look at his highlights, you come away just, man, like this is the dude, trade everything in the farm, number one overall, we got our guy. And I think that would be really easy to say based off of his highlights. But what becomes frustrating is everything else that you watch from Anthony Richardson. If you go into his film tape like I've done, I haven't watched every single throw down and everything like that, so that's on me. But if you get there and you watch Anthony Richardson, you're gonna wonder like, how is he missing these dudes? How is he missing dudes that are on the sideline, open, like college open? Not even, NFL open is a whole different discussion. But this dude, he can go and miss, 2 passes in the same set of downs, and the next one's a home run. And that's the thing that's going to make so many people be like, we need Anthony Richardson. Forget his ceiling and he can throw it far and he can run it fast. His ability on the field is just head and shoulders above a lot of quarterbacks right now when he's at his highest. But we got to reel in and also look what his actual tape is, and then you're just like, man, like if only he did X, Y, and Z, he would be the next dude. So to me, that's Anthony Richardson. But who's Anthony Richardson to you?
Well, to me, Anthony Richardson he's a flip of a coin. Heads is extremely dynamic, and tails is you don't really think that he should be playing quarterback. Just some plays, and I think all of those plays are just fundamentals. He feels to me like a guy who played a lot of backyard football growing up, so he just he dominated athletically. I've seen a few of those guys in my high schools as well, where it's just to them they drop back and then they run, or they run around for a little while and then they find the open guy and they make the pass. But when you force them to stay in the pocket and make reads and do some of those things, they're inconsistencies. I'm not saying that he can't do it, but and his passing numbers speak to that as well. It says that he can't consistently do it at the level that we would like for him to do it. But with great coaching, with great play design and a really good system, I think he'd be able to flourish. You wouldn't ask him to do much, and that's why I think he'd be perfect in Indy actually, because Shane Steichen just worked with Jalen Hurts, and I know Jalen Hurts was a much better passer than AR coming out, but it shows you that there's possibility for him to get there. That Shane Steichen would be the guy that would be able to draw that talent, that ability in him, would help him, hone it in and bring it in some. And but the main problem that a lot of Colts Twitter is having, or the people that I interact with are having, is picking AR at number 4. A lot of people think that that's too high of a price to pay for such a project, but the rewards could be very high as well. In my opinion, I think it all depends on who's available. If the other 3 guys are gone at 4, you don't really have a choice but to take AR there. But if one of the other guys who is more ready than he is available, then I would think that Indy weighs out their options and they would go with the more polished passing prospect. But if that prospect happens to be Bryce Young, it becomes a much tougher decision because of the size.
Yeah. I think with Anthony Richardson, I feel like it's all a matter of the context and where we draft him and everything. It also matters who we have as a quarterback on the roster when he comes onto the team as well. Do we still
Mm-hmm.
have Matt Ryan, which I don't think we will? Do we still have Nick Foles, which I don't think we will? Who are we going to be bringing in? Is it just going to be Sam Ellinger who is running the show until one of these quarterbacks are ready? So I think that's interesting. I think a lot of the AR-15 is context and projection. And so it's just so hard to say, yes, this is my guy, pound the table on him, and you trade the farm for him. So that to me is Anthony Richardson. I wanted to bring up just the other guy that I think we have been kind of talking about that can end up in this discussion for either the number 4 overall pick or potentially a trade up. And that's this dude, Will Levis. I heard that he drinks his coffee with mayo stirred into it, so I don't know if I want him based off of that. But the the thing with Will Levis is he has the size, he has the strength, he's got the arm. You can pull up a Josh Allen throw almost any game that he's in, and you're just like, man, wow, like great throw. But he's also older. Yeah, I think he's 23, 24 years old. He transferred into Kentucky from Penn State. And, one of the good things about him is he did bring Kentucky, not him himself, but he was a part of the Kentucky team that surprised a lot of people the last 2 years. And they had a lot of weeks where they were in the top 10 of all of college. And doing that in the SEC as a basketball school is really hard to do. So Will Levis, we got to give him a lot of credit with where credit's due. He runs a pro style offense and he can make some pretty bomb throws. But there's are some things where it's like, okay, this guy still has some development to be where Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are just in running the offenses, and he's older than them, and so that kind of just makes a little bit of a hesitation on the prospect end of it. But when you get him, you're like, man, this guy can do anything right now, and that's exciting in and of himself. But I don't know if we have Will Levis in each of our own top 3, but I think that's where most people are expecting the Colts to go because size, strength, arm ability, pro style offense, all the positives that we just listed, and age can be kind of worked through in the NFL because you can last until you're 35 if you're damn good. So that's kind of Will Levis. To me, what are your thoughts on Will Levis?
Yeah, the age thing was going to be the first point that I was actually going to bring up with that. Quarterbacks are playing well into their 30s now. Some of them, Brady into his 40s. So, it's possible.
Yeah.
If it's been done before, it can always be done again. So I'm not really too concerned about the age. And I believe Joe Burrow came out a little bit older than other quarterback prospects as well. So I don't think that the should be like that huge of a factor. But I get what people are saying though.
Yeah.
But as far as Will Levis, I always like to think about the guys or the athletes who were going to be top 5 draft picks before the last season that they played, because 2 seasons ago, Will Levis was a consensus top 5 draft pick. Like there were people gushing all over him, talking about his intangibles, his leadership, his moxie, the way he carries himself, the way he can play football, the way he rushes the ball, his athletic ability. So all of that didn't just disappear in one season. It changed because of his situation, of course. He had a different OC. He lost Wandale Robinson. He lost a few other weapons. And this past season, he was literally the only thing that kept Kentucky relevant. He was the only player on that team, and it showed a lot during their bowl game when he didn't play and Kentucky couldn't even score a point. I don't even think they scored a point, or they scored like 7 points. They scored something really ridiculously low, but they were getting blown out by Iowa. So
Iowa.
right. So Will Levis is still as good as he was 2 years ago. There are some things that I think he even improved on in those 2 years, and I think he's learned a lot in his situation in his last season as well. I think that he carried himself very professionally for a guy who was on a team who he pretty much knew wasn't going anywhere. He knew wasn't going to do anything, but he came out there every single week and he gutted it out. And regardless of the national media, throwing salt on his name and talking about him and the things that he was doing, he's like, I'm playing with half of a team here. So, and he didn't make any excuses. He
Yeah,
just
in
came out
the
and balled.
SEC.
In the SEC, right.
Yeah.
So he just came out and he put it on the line every game and stuff like that. Like you respect stuff like that because that talks more about his mental makeup than it does everything else. It talks more about his, like he's not as fragile of a human being. Like he's a leader. That's what I've heard a lot about him so far.
Yeah.
And as far as the tools, he has all the tools. There isn't anything that he can't do. Everything else is all about coaching, fine tuning, and getting him to be, as close to amazing or as close to perfect as he can possibly be. And that's why with Will Levis, the only thing that I would like to know is his work ethic.
Yeah.
That is the only thing for me, because if he has the kind of work ethic where he's the first guy in, last guy out, he's bringing guys along, he's a great teammate, he's setting up throwing sessions, and he's doing all of the things that, just regular coaching can't teach you, or regular coaching can't provide you. His hunger, his drive, how great does he want to be? Because if out of all of these guys, if Will Levis were to be the one to have that dog in him, to have that switch in him, to have that thing that makes you want to be perfect, he could be an all-time great. Like he's physically that talented.
Yeah. And that's the thing that's nice about being top 4 rather than 5, 6, or 7, like we could have potentially have been with the last 2 weeks of our season panning out. And so being at number 4, we have an easier road to get one of these 4 guys. And I think we walk away with one of these 4 guys. Tanner McKee is someone that people talk about, and Hendon Hooker and stuff like that. I don't think there's a whole lot wrong with them. It's just they're not the top dogs right now. And I just don't see them surpassing these guys just with an off season, in the draft process. So that's kind of a good look at what we're going to be doing this offseason with drafting, keeping in mind Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard, all the key players in the situation. If you were to put a bet on it, would you say the Colts? Who would you put your money on player wise that the Colts draft, and would you trade up for him or not?
Okay. I think I have 2 names that I would put my money on, and that's Will Levis, 1.
Okay.
And I think it would be Bryce Young, 2nd.
Okay, so you're hedging with
And
Bryce Young.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm hedging. I'm
Okay.
hedging with Bryce Young,
Okay.
and I think if we were to jump up to one, I think it would absolutely be Will Levis, and
Okay.
if we were to stay at four, it would depend on which one of those two guys still remain on the board. And if by for some weird reason that all three of them are gone, then we'd have no choice, of course, but to select AR.
Yeah.
But I would think that Ballard's perfect candidate, perfect pick is Will Levis.
Okay. Sweet. I like that. I don't know, man. It's hard to really put it on and just like put some money on it, but I would say I'm thinking it's CJ Stroud. I think his accuracy and things like that are things that are just going to make that transition in the NFL just that much easier. And we can build around CJ Stroud, I think, pretty quickly. We got offensive line. Yeah, I think we got great pieces. Bernhard Ryman showed up strong near the end. And, we have some other things that we can do to foster a good offensive line. So I think that is something that could definitely happen. And I think if I'm hedging, I think Will Levis is my hedge there too because of what you're just saying. You did that very well. So that kind of wraps up what we're expecting on the draft. We can probably put out some more as we learn more in the pro days and the combine. But we're going to move on into the other part of the offseason that matters a lot, and it's who are the Colts going to retain? And so I'm going to pull up here. This is going to be a spot track. I believe Yannick Ngakwe's contract just became void as of yesterday. I need to get an ad blocker. Um, but uh, so Yannick Ngakwe is officially a restricted free agent, and we have a whole list of names here too that we're going to talk about. But rather than go through every single name, we're going to talk about the ones that matter, that are kind of either going to definitely get re-signed or are some of those fringe guys that maybe we want to re-sign but just might not be able to get re-signed. So if you were the Colts, I guess I keep on asking you these questions, but if you were the Colts, who are your top free agents to keep?
Well, I'd like to think I'd like to think that Paris Campbell would be at the top of that list. I think that if we're going to bring in a rookie quarterback along paired with a rookie head coach, I think the best thing that we can do for them is to get him as many weapons as possible. And I think Paris Campbell is as much a weapon as anyone else that we have in our room. I've advocated for him for the past 2 years. I think he's the best wide receiver in our room. I think Michael Pittman has the physical size and he can be physically dominant, but when it comes to playing the wide receiver position, as far as separation, hands, speed, route running, being a technician, Paris Campbell is the best guy in our room. So I think that we should make it a priority to sign him. And I think that Chris Ballard will, because Chris Ballard was the one who drafted him. And for the past 2 years, when fans were clamoring for him to be cut or released or traded, Chris Ballard said no. He doubled and tripled down, and he said, I believe in my guy Paris, and I am keeping my guy Paris. So I would like to think that that would be his first priority. I think that I think that who was that? Taekwon Lewis is also a guy that Ballard really loves.
You're
That he
just
kept
picking all the
around,
Ohio
and
State guys, dude. You got.
oh no, not
I'm
all
just
the Ohio State guys.
kidding.
No, not all the Ohio
That's
State
two in
guys.
a row.
They just happen to be the two for me that I think would
Uh,
make would make a really big impact. I
yeah,
do think that Yannick is a step above Taekwon though, because Yannick has been able to stay healthy. Yannick is a consistent force on the edge, and he really started turning it on towards the end of the season. That's when he got most of his sack production. And people were complaining that he wasn't getting enough sacks, but it was his first year in our system, and he's a 8.5 sack guy. Like that's what he was brought in to do, and he got us 9.5. So
yeah,
essentially, he came in and he did his job. But I think him being more confident and more relaxed down the stretch allowed him to play faster, allowed him to play smoother. And I think another year in that system, he could be dominant next year. Like next year, Yannick Ngakoue could be in position to get 12, 13 sacks maybe. Like I see him having that kind of an impact. So I think it'd be great for him to stay because we don't really have a dominant edge rusher outside of him. and he's a tier under the elite guys, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think that that's where Chris Ballard would make up the difference. Matt Pryor, unfortunately, I think he's got to be a cut candidate. Brandon Fascion, I think Gus Bradley likes him a lot. So unless he's willing to take like a small deal, I think if he wants to get paid something more, he'll probably be released. Well, not probably be released, but he'll probably be signed by someone else, and we'll probably offer him a low contract. And if he wants to go somewhere else, he probably will.
Yeah.
But I do think that Gus Bradley wants to keep him around because he's familiar with the system, and he actually has success in our defense. It doesn't really show up in the numbers, but if you watch him play, like he does some really good things. He's just very inconsistent, I think.
Yeah.
Rodney McLeod. I would love to get Rodney McLeod back. I think Rodney McLeod solidified that defensive backfield. I think Rodney McLeod kept those guys together. He taught them how to study. He taught them how to work. He taught them how to be versatile because there is no one, I mean, there are rarely guys in the NFL that is versatile as Rodney McLeod. Rodney McLeod could legit line up in any defensive back position and he'd be successful there. He has all the tools and all the skills. So I think he'd be a great veteran presence. Rodney McLeod reminds me a lot of Antoine Buffet.
Okay, so it's funny you said that because I was going to say Darius Butler or Mike Mitchell.
Yeah, them too. Yeah. Mike Mitchell was that guy when he was there. Absolutely.
And
so
he was
a presence like that is great.
Mike Mitchell was the safeties or DBs coach for us this last
year.
He's
the DBs coach. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Ben Banagou, I think Ben Banagou is going to end up being an odd man left out kind of thing because I think now our defensive line room is actually healthy. And I think some of the guys that we kept losing to injury, we're starting to get some of them back. And Taekwon is one of those guys. It's unfortunate. He's torn his ACL 2 seasons now, back to back.
Yeah.
So that sucks. But we have, the other guys like Dale started stepping up towards the end of the season. And if we can keep Kwity Paye on the field for every game of the season, every game that Kwity Paye has played, he has had some sort of an impact. Yeah. Every single one. So like that makes me, that gives me a great deal of confidence in him. So I think that, Banagou would just have fallen out of the rotation, unfortunately. So he's probably going to be one to go. Dennis Kelly, I think it's all a matter of what we do at tackle. If we bring in a swing tackle or if we get one through free agency, I think that we definitely should, but I don't think that Ballard will. I think Ballard will focus more on guard play in this offseason rather than tackle play because Braden Smith started picking it back up towards the end of the season again, and they started gelling a little bit. And like you alluded to earlier, Bernard Raymond was solid down the stretch. So I think he'll focus more on guard play.
Yeah.
And then who else? The other guys are mostly special teams guys. I think we should bring back Chase McClough, EJ Speed. EJ Speed, I think, will also end up being an odd man out because Chris Ballard has a really good track record of drafting really good linebackers. So I think those are the guys that he's more than willing to let walk. Like Anthony Walker was that a couple of years ago, and he was great for us. And he went to Cleveland, and he was a great leader there. And he performed well when he was on the field. So I do think Ballard has a knack for drafting linebackers. So linebackers are probably going to be the first ones to go. The linebacker free agents. Yeah.
So
the other guys that I can.
The thing I was going to say is with the linebackers here, we got EJ Speed and Bobby Okereke that are both kind of in that free agent sphere of being let go. I think the reason why EJ Speed would be the one that we keep is he mimics Leonard's size, speed pretty well, and he makes a good impact on special teams. I think he's had 1 or 2 blocked kicks or punts or whatever. And I think he makes enough of an impact where I think, like you're saying, I do think Ballard has a great track record with linebackers. We're going to lose, 2 of our starters, essentially. That would mean we would have Darius Leonard and Zaire Franklin as our linebackers, which is good. And I think EJ Speed has made a case, at least to be a special teams and backup linebacker, especially where we don't know where Shaq Leonard right now is with his injury. And so I would love to keep EJ Speed. Obviously, all these guys, it's, with the right price kind of deal where, we're not going to be spending an arm and leg for any of these guys because Ballard just doesn't do that. But some of the players that I like for us to keep, I think Doolin is good special teams wise, and he's still under 26 years old, so he still has a lot of youth in him. Paris Campbell, I think, is a must need back unless Frank Reich pulls him away to Carolina. That's one that is scary, but they have a lot of wide receivers like that in Carolina, so I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
Terrace
necessarily.
Marshall.
Yeah, Terrace
Terrace
Marshall is
Marshall
good.
would probably stop them from getting Paris Campbell.
Well, and they also have Curtis Samuel, who kind of plays
Cur-
similarly and stuff
Well,
like that.
Curtis Samuel is in Washington now.
Then who's the other guy I'm thinking of then?
The guy from Laviska Shenault is
So
the
there's
gadget guy.
Chenault, and then there's someone else though, unless they traded him. It was Curtis Samuel and someone else there for a while.
I'm not sure who the other person
He's kind
there
of
was.
like
I just know.
he's kind of like a yak guy.
Yeah,
Not
that's yeah. It's not Laviska Shenault though.
no, not
Did they
not
draft him?
yeah, not Chenault. Um. Anyways, I think there's someone that's DJ or
Oh, DJ Moore.
DJ Moore. Yes.
Yeah, but DJ Moore is their number one wide receiver. It just
Yeah.
so happens that he's also a yak guy.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah,
he's
yeah.
their
So
number
DJ
one guy,
Moore, Visca, and Terrace Marshall. I think Paris isn't necessarily a big need there, but that's someone
Right.
who, if they were to steal him, that's who I would definitely look as the number one candidate. Um, but okay, so I'm gonna go through this list of players that I think we should keep. I think Ngakwe, Taekwon Lewis, if we can, Doolin and McLeod would be great. Paris Campbell, obviously, McCaughlin, and EJ Speed. I think the rest is kind of those like, you know, they're backups, and if they want to stay,
Mhm.
great. I don't think we keep Matt Hawk. Hopefully, we get Rigoberto back, and then
Right.
I don't want Brandon Fashion back mainly because he is a little bit older. He does run the system well, but it's not where it's irreplaceable. I think he's
Right.
definitely replaceable, and he made over or about 4 million last year. So the biggest conversation I feel like is, do we actually spend on Okereke? I don't think we will. And then, do we keep Taekwon Lewis and Ngakwe? I think we keep Ngakwe, especially if we retain Gus Bradley, because he's kind of followed Gus Bradley everywhere. I think he's kind of that perfect, like you said, 8.5 sack kind of guy. And he definitely brings it home, but he's not that tier one guy, that Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa, all those. So I definitely agree with you there. Is there anyone that that you would like just say don't come back? Is there anyone on this that you say don't even call us?
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's Matt Pryor.
Yeah.
And it sucks, and it's nothing against him as a human being, because I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
he's a great guy. Like, it's nothing on him or his character, but it's just something is not working in our system for him. Like, something's not working in our building for him. I think, there is a scenario where we keep him, or where he comes back, because we got him from Philly initially. So there's a scenario where the new O-line coach that comes in can actually, put him in better positions to succeed, and he's willing to accept a backup role.
Yeah.
So, he could stay in that capacity, and it would never hurt to have extra linemen. But this past season, he just did not perform well at all, and he wasn't good. We just have to be honest. He wasn't good. No matter
Yeah.
what position he was, no matter where he played,
tried.
no matter how many snaps, he just wasn't good.
Yeah. Okay. So let me. Oh yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention was Rodney McLeod. I definitely wouldn't mind him staying. Like you said, he can play a number of different positions, and he makes an impact even at his age of 33 years old. The only thing is, we have Nick Cross kind of waiting in the shadows, and I think Rodney McLeod definitely showed that we needed that veteran force in there, and I think we still do. So I don't think we get rid of him. But the thing with taking McLeod is that takes game snaps away from Nick Cross, who I don't think he showed anything bad. He just wasn't as experienced as McLeod. McLeod gets in those gaps and those crevices Nick Cross just wasn't getting into. It seems like.
Veteran experience.
Exactly. And so
Hmm.
I wonder if McLeod wants to stay and if he's staying to be the full time starter throughout the season, or if there's ever a conversation where it's like we want you to stay here, but you're also you're getting up there in age. We need to get some of these younger guys some playing time. And basically, is that something that he can handle? I think he can. But is that something that he would stick around for, or is he looking to go for a ring, that kind of thing? So that's the one thing that I'm kind of concerned with McLeod coming back is he wanting to is are we going to give him the full job? Is he willing to kind of play the vet and be on a great team, or is he going to want to hop on with the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, those kind of teams?
Hmm. Well, I personally don't think that Rodney McLeod cares about any of that. Like I think he's 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 what I would want in a teammate. Like if somebody told me that Rodney McLeod would be part of my own personal football team, I would be like, yes, I'd go to war with that guy every single week, every single down, every single play, like every single quarter. And if you remember, Nick Cross was actually named the starter at the beginning of last season. Nick Cross was the starter for weeks, I believe, 1 and 2. I'm not entirely sure, but he was the projected starter coming into the year. But because he wasn't really that up to speed, and there are certain things that you can only gain through experience, certain things that you can only learn by playing snaps, that Robbie McLeod had to step in, and he filled in that job for Nick Cross. And I only think that happened because Nick Cross wasn't ready. Now, Robbie McLeod ended up dominating in the role that he played, so that kind of muddies up the situation a little bit, which also is the reason why I think that Kenny Moore will absolutely be shipped off, because I was reading in some beat writer articles that down the stretch when Kenny Moore was injured, Julian Blackman was playing that slot role, and Julian Blackman was playing really good in that slot role because he played corner at Utah. He started off as a corner and then he transitioned to a safety. So he has the ball skills, the range, the fluidity, the hips. So Julian Blackman can absolutely be a slot corner, and he can be a really good slot corner too.
Oh yeah,
So I
especially with his
think
size too.
right, and I think when that happens, that presents a unique opportunity for Gus Bradley, because Gus Bradley, all the way back from Seattle, loved to run those nickel formations. He loves having DBs that can hit, DBs that can fly, DBs that can get to the ball, that can cover ground while also covering big body tight ends and receivers. So I think that Rodney McLeod, Cross, and Thomas could work together with Julian Blackman to solidify the entire back end. Like we have one of those back ends where if everything clicks next year, we can have a no-fly zone type of back end. Like those
Yeah,
guys are
Haley Lock.
legit back there. Like
Oh yeah,
all of those guys. Yeah. So I think that it'll be more about regulating snaps. It'll be more about changing bodies and situations. It'll be more about keeping those bodies fresh, because our safeties tend to get hurt because those guys hit. Those guys come downhill. Those guys, will put their bodies on the line for the sake of their teammate making a tackle. So I think it will be nice to have as many bodies as we can. And I'm sure Ballard's going to add another DB or two, because that's usually one of the rooms where we have a considerable amount of depth. And we still have Dallas Flowers, who's a really good returner. But in the Houston Texans game, like, he did a couple good things that were good. And, he has some room to grow, and he has some technique that he has to learn as far as playing DB. But we have bodies. We have young guys there. We have guys that need reps. And those are things that we'll figure out as the offseason goes along. Those are things that we'll see in camp, things that we'll see in, preseason games next year, because I think those preseason games will look a lot different than the preseason games that we just had.
yeah. I think there's going to be a lot more fight in those preseason games
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure. Um,
Hmm.
well, I think we are kind of out of what we wanted to talk about today. But I think this is a great conversation. So, we're gonna continue to talk about the draft throughout this off season, talk about off season, all that, all that good stuff here.
Hmm.
But we're gonna kind of wrap up here. If you guys haven't already, definitely go hop on Twitter. If you're on Twitter, follow absolutely here. His handle's right under his face on the video. But if you are not watching and you're just listening, it's at AB_soul, like having a soul in your body, solutely. So give him a quick follow. I appreciate him hopping on the show. And before you hop off, drop a like, comment, and subscribe. Definitely helps us out a bunch as a smaller channel. Shows us that you want this kind of content, and it gives you that content more. So it's a win-win for both sides. But thanks for hopping on, man. Appreciate it.
Of course, anytime, anytime. And I'm looking forward to some of the other Colts talks. And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
trying to get myself out there and trying to get myself involved in, a few other projects and things like that and some other podcasts. So I would love it if anybody, reached out and asked me. It's really not that big of a deal. I'll make some time in my schedule for it. And yeah, go Indy. I can't wait for this season. I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
wait for everything that's gonna unfold because I feel like we've made all the right moves ever since the airplane video. I know a lot of people didn't really see it that way, and a lot of people see it as being dysfunctional and the world is burning. But like I legitimately think that from that airplane video, Jim Irsay decided that he was going to burn down the store for the insurance money, and that
Yep.
was the only way to make it work.
Yep. All right. Well, appreciate being on here, and yeah, follow along and have a good day.
All
Peace.
right, man. Take care.
Peace.